Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again working on our WrestleMania review project. For this particular episode, we are discussing WrestleMania 6, which took place on April 1st, 1990, at the Sky Dome in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This was the first time WrestleMania didn't take place in the United States, and the announced attendance for this WrestleMania was 67,678. The tagline for this WrestleMania was the Ultimate Challenge. And I'm sure you can piece together without even ever watching it. I'm sure you can piece together what that exactly means if you were given the main event, especially. Um, but yeah, this one has some ups and downs for sure. Like every other WrestleMania before it, this obviously being the sixth installment that we've done, and you definitely notice patterns and see these kind of things that makes it hard to differentiate from year to year if you really look into it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll rate every single match and rate the entire WrestleMania as we always do. We kick off WrestleMania 6 with the returning with a new gimmick, the model Rick Martel going up against someone we hadn't seen for a couple of years, and that is Koko Beware. KP, what did you think of this opening match? Did it was it a quality opening contest for you, or comparatively speaking to the five we've seen before?
Wouldn't say it was particularly a quality one-on-one match, to be honest with you. It was very much how I would describe most WrestleMania matches in this sort of era, and it was okay. It was all right. It was there. Um, in terms of the match itself, I think they started off kind of well, and they seemed to, you know, have a decent beginning. But then it just really just went into the motions and just went exactly how a meh WrestleMania match normally does go. In my opinion, you know, it didn't really set the world alight. It didn't do anything incredibly bad or anything. It was just sort of somewhere in the middle. So Koko Beware, he gets Irish whipped into the corner. This is towards the late stages of the matchup now. He goes for this like springboard crossbody sort of sorts, but it ends up missing with Rick Martel ducking underneath. And Martel locks in the Boston Crab pretty much straight away. And then that results in Koko Beware essentially tapping instantly, to be fair. It's very, very quick. You just about see his hand sort of like tapping on the mat. So yeah, it was a very quick submission once it had been locked in, to be fair. But yeah, the match didn't seem too long. I don't know how long it was, but I think it probably was only about 5 or 6 minutes, I would say, at most. Yeah, it didn't really ever seem to get going, to be honest with you. But it was, like I say, it was okay. It was fine. It wasn't a great opening contest, but it was it was okay. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. There just really isn't much to say about it, except for the fact that, seeing Rick Martel in a new gimmick, I suppose, he seemed to, I guess, be settling well into the heel persona, I suppose. And yeah, Koko just, I don't know, like his WrestleMania matches really haven't been great as like a general. So yeah, it's kind of disappointing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it felt like for the match we got, it was a decent back and forth, and then all of a sudden, it was over, and we could copy paste that specific summary over a lot of these WrestleManias through the first five, now six WrestleManias, and just a phrase would be, give it 5 more minutes to make it something special, and that seems to be how these go. But yeah, this is fit into that. We could have an entire bucket full of those kind of matches through the first six WrestleManias. I gave this one a little higher than you. I gave it a 5 out of 10, but definitely not something you're gonna rush back to go watch again. Getting into the second match, we have Demolition going up against the Colossal Connection with Bobby the Brain Heenan for those World Tag Team Championships. And of course, that Colossal Connection, including Haku and Andre the Giant. Um, in terms of a tag match, this one was a strange one. If you thought Andre was hard to watch in prior years, that is very much multiplied by this year. You can tell just him getting in and out of the ring is very difficult for him. You can't help but feel bad for him. But yeah, KP, curious to get your thoughts on this one. This one has a couple talking points.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It does have a couple of talking points, to be honest with you. In terms of my general my general thoughts of the matchup, though, I really enjoyed this one. To be fair, I thought this was a lot of fun. It had a very interesting dynamic. Yeah, you mentioned Andre the Giant, very much struggling, not looking comfortable whatsoever. And that was very apparent. That was very clear. He didn't even become a legal man during the contest. He was only ever on the apron slash in the ring towards the late stages of the contest when it was about to be over and done with. So yeah, Haku was literally the legal man for his team for the entirety of the matchup, and yeah, he took a whole lot of punishment here. One half of the Colossal connection by Demolition. It was it was a Demolition job. He literally got worn down and worn down and worn down. Eventually, just getting worn down a bit too much after a hot tag. And then Andre, he does get into the ring trying to help out, but he gets stuck in the ropes, which seems to be a running theme for Andre's WrestleMania matches, I've noticed. I'm not sure if it's all of them, but definitely the majority, he does end up sort of like tangled up in those ropes at least once during each match, which is quite interesting. Maybe it's a staple of Andre the Giant's matches, perhaps. But yeah, he gets stuck there, and he can't do anything after that. You got Bobby the Brain Heenan trying to get him out of it, but he's not very helpful in that situation. Takes way too long, and yeah, then we get to a point where Demolition, they hit an elbow drop backbreaker, and they get the victory and win the tag team titles. So I think it was a unique dynamic. It's very interesting. But what I will say is the crowd was absolutely electric for this contest. They were loud as hell, which just made it feel even bigger and better. When Demolition got the victory, the crowd absolutely popped. They were roaring throughout the majority of the matchup. They definitely made it seem probably a lot better than it might have been. Maybe if it wasn't for the crowd, perhaps it might have been not quite as good, in my opinion. But no, they definitely helped the situation for sure. A little bit of post-match shenanigans. You got an angry Heenan getting up in the face of Andre the Giant, up in the corner, and he ends up slapping him. You don't really slap somebody who's like, what, at least like a foot and a half, 2 foot taller than you, do you, really? So yeah, he gets punished for it. He gets grabbed and sort of like gets chopped around a little bit. You got Haku that's basically back up into the swing of things now, back up to his feet, waiting to kick Andre the Giant. Goes for a kick. The kick gets caught, and then he gets a couple of chops then for himself. And yeah, he eventually escapes to ringside. Heenan and Haku tried to go up on that lift that they used to go between the backstage and the ring area, and Andre the Giant's having none of it, drags them both out of it. He gets on it himself, and then just has the lift up himself instead. But no, I genuinely really liked this match. I thought it was a unique way of doing it, with only having one legal man and the other one basically being utterly useless, but being a sort of like a physical threat. There were a couple of moments where he laid out the odd like punch or whatever, or attack from the apron, but that was literally about it for Andre. And Demolition, they looked fantastic in this one. Just a great tag team. I think going back and watching these WrestleManias, I think Demolition's probably the standout, I think, for me so far from these 6. And they've only been in, what, 3 of them, 2 of them? So, yeah, I don't know. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I really like this matchup. And yeah, I don't know if it was just the crowd making it seem a lot better than it was, but I'm very interested to see what you made of this one.
So yeah, this one's a strange one because, in the sense of a tag match, it didn't really feel like it. It felt more like a handicap match. It felt like Demolition going up against Haku. That's how it felt to me. Yeah, and Andre getting tied up in the ropes, very, very much a staple of a WrestleMania match for him. And yeah, nice win for Demolition, even though, they had one guy to work over the entire time. The few times that Andre does come in and tries to land a kick, like he barely touches him. Yeah, it just to me, it just like it tugged my heartstring. Like it's hard to watch. Like 'cause we all love Andre, we know Andre, we know the stories and all of that. But to see that kind of progress throughout the years, a couple of years ago, I remember saying something like, "Yeah, it's a bit hard to watch." And last year being his last singles match, and this being his last televised match. With WWE, I think it's quite evident to see why. But yeah, Andre getting the final go home good guy cheering by taking down Heenan and riding that card away. I think that's a pretty perfect ending for him. But yeah, in terms of the match, it was hard to distinguish it as a tag match. But for what we got, yeah, I agree. It was entertaining. Demolition is one of the better tag teams, and Haku did a pretty good job of taking that and still seeming like a viable threat. So I think this makes him look good as well. So I guess one of 6 out of 10. It was very emotional, but regardless, yeah, this was it was a hard watch from Andre's point of view. I think if you take Andre out, it's a pretty decent tag match. Put someone else in his place, but it wouldn't quite be the same, obviously, because it doesn't have the star power. So I get why he was there. But yeah, hard to put into words how it makes you feel watching him kind of move around like that. But with that, we'll move on to the next match, which has the Earthquake with Jimmy Hart getting his first appearance of the night, going up against Hercules. So we've seen Hercules quite a few times, some hits and some misses for sure. Okay, what you think? What you think of this match?
I think this is one of those classic ones, like the opener. It's all right. It's okay. Nothing truly spectacular in this one. You've got a pretty dominant Earthquake for the majority of the matchup. They gets to a point where Hercules attempts a comeback of sorts. Here's a series of clotheslines. Eventually staggers Earthquake a bit more with each one. Eventually gets down to one knee. Hercules maybe getting a little bit too carried away. Seemingly just like attempts to go for a backbreaker afterwards, but instead he eats an elbow to the back, and that knocks him down, completely flat out. Earthquake then hits an Earthquake splash to win the match, and then hits another one post-match as sort of like an aftershock style experience. It was a heavyweight clash, I think it's fair to say, in this one. Earthquake's pretty quick for a guy that's, built the way that he is. He can get some serious speed off those ropes. Not Braun Breaker-esque speed, but he's pretty quick off those ropes, to be fair, for someone of his size. But yeah, I think in terms of the matchup, it was okay. It's not going to set the world alight, is it, realistically? But yeah, it showcased Earthquake, and, I think this was his WrestleMania debut as far as I can remember. And yeah, Hercules just sort of like having these, this, I guess, like, decently average matches, quite often. I think there might have been a couple of fluctuating little scores in there from myself, but I gave this one a 5 out of 10. It didn't really do anything for me so much, but it was okay. Like, there wasn't like anything glaringly wrong with it. It's just, it was okay and all right.
Yeah, 5 out of 10 appears to be the rating to go for a lot of these matches because it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't memorable, as you said, much like the very first contest. And my notes basically consisted of this earthquake guy can really move for his size. So yeah, similar thinking there for the both of us. And yeah, you getting two of those kind of what in modern day like an annihilator almost off the ropes, and yeah, he it's effective, and him jumping on the mat to give off the earthquake. It didn't really do a ton, but interesting idea. Maybe just not executed quite to par. But yeah, 5 out of 10. It was there. I won't go back and look for it. So yeah, another one of those matches for the bucket. Getting on to the next match, we have Brutus the Barber Beefcake going up against Mr. Perfect with the Genius. Quick fun fact there: the Genius is actually Randy Savage's younger brother. So interesting bit there. Yeah, to me, this is a turn for the evening. One of the best matches of the night. And when it has the two guys in there, obviously you're going to be in for a better match. KP, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I thought this was a decent matchup. I think it was definitely an improvement on, the couple of singles matches we've seen prior to this one on this WrestleMania. Mr. Perfect, he's got such a great arsenal of wrestling. He's so incredibly gifted. Brutus Beefcake's pretty damn consistent as well. We've seen these WrestleMania matches from him over the past, few years, and he never really seems to have a terrible matchup. So yeah, I think you put these two together in a contest, and it's going to be something relatively good, right? At least I think that's probably what it was, to be fair. Yeah, you mentioned the Genius as well. I didn't know that about him and Macho Man Randy Savage. It's a very interesting little tidbit there. But yeah, he is at ringside during this one. He distracts the referee. Ends up sliding. He's got like a scroll, I think the commentators call it. He slides it into the ring for Mr. Perfect. This is quite early in the matchup, maybe about a few minutes in. And Mr. Perfect does be able to get the scroll like quite secretly, just like tucks it like under his chest. The referee's still distracted by Genius, and he actually manages to strike Brutus's head with the scroll, which lays him out. Then, for the next, like, I don't know, probably felt like a good 5, 6, 7 minutes or so. Mr. Perfect just progressively, just playing with his food, I suppose, really, with Brutus. Just inflicting punishment after punishment after punishment. Eventually, he gets a little bit overconfident. He gets a little bit too carried away. And, he allows Brutus Creed... sorry, excuse me. He allows Brutus Beefcake to capitalize. He gets a slingshot for his efforts, and that sort of catapults him into the corner, where his head actually hits the ring post. So Mr. Perfect bounces back into the ring, completely flat out. I'm thinking at this point, all right, this is Brutus's opportunity to capitalize here and to really, get the win going forward. But Brutus just covers him straight away, and it's a 1, 2, 3. It's job done. I thought maybe, if anything, the ending was a little anticlimactic. I think we could have seen maybe like a sleeper here or something from Brutus, and he could have got the victory like that, because Perfect was out, right? He took the pinfall anyway, so may as well just get him the win properly after that. But yeah, I thought he could have got the job done properly there. But alas, maybe that's my only main criticism from the contest, because it was quite fun, and I like the different style that we did see from it. We just completely flat out Brutus for the majority, and then Mr. Perfect just just messing around a little bit, just taking his time and being very progressive, and obviously came back to bite him eventually. Post match, got a little bit of a situation with Brutus, and he goes to get his cutters. Can't find them because Genius has taken him away, and he's like walking back up the ramp. Brutus ends up going and taking them away from him. Goes back towards Mr. Perfect, but he's already got out the ring at this point. He takes the cutters, and he ends up getting the Genius into the ring as Perfect's basically just gone off and ran away. And he ends up giving him a little bit of a haircut. So I'm sure you'll be happy about that one, Nick. I think last year he didn't have the chance to give anybody a haircut, so this time he did. I give it a 6.5 out of 10. I thought it was a good contest, and definitely an improvement on what we've seen in singles capacity so far in this WrestleMania.
Yeah, and definitely the best match of the night so far. Like I said, we've watched enough now with this being the 6th that you just see a couple of guys in the ring, and you're going to get a better match, or at least that's the hope. And I completely agree with you. I think, locking on that sleeper would have been a much better ending, especially considering that this is Mr. Perfect's first televised loss in the company, which at this point is a year and a half into it. And his first televised loss was getting hit with that metal post. So that was it. I think you add a sleeper to that, or something, or even a roll up, I think probably would have been just the shock value of it, because I think, had we been there, knowing that Mr. Perfect was undefeated, for him to get beat, I think regardless was a moment. So if we were there live, it probably would have been a better match for us, because we were like, oh my, that's a talking point, if you will. But yeah, the old saying, if this one had 5 more minutes to really work, I think this could have been, a good match turned great with the talent involved. So, the haircut to Genius was not on anyone's to-do list except for Brutus's, so nobody knew about it. So Randy was pretty upset that his younger brother had to take the haircut, but apparently everyone was all right in the end. But it was a shock. His genuine reaction was shock on TV, and that was his honest reaction, because he didn't know he was getting it. So I think that sometimes makes for better TV. But yeah, I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10 as well. Definitely the best match of the night so far. Getting on to the next match, and this kind of fits the same bill. You see all these guys in the ring, you're thinking, hey, this should be a good match. Unfortunately, that was not the case. KP, give us your thoughts on this match and kind of the shock value that you had with it.
Yeah, I guess by technicality, this is the worst match of the night. It didn't really, go into anything crazy. It was roughly about 25 seconds or so, if that. I don't know. It didn't seem very long. Let's put it that way. Hart Foundation and the Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zhukov, Uh, they're very much in the mindset that they're going to be singing the Soviet Union national anthem, and they start doing it in the ring. The Hart Foundation, being Jim, Neidhart, and Bret Hart, behind them, they just lay them out, and it gets to a point where one gets thrown out of the ring. They hit a heart attack, and that is the match. Done and dusted. It's literally as quick as that. Simple, easy peasy. And yeah, very, very quick fashion win for the Hart Foundation. I don't know how I could possibly talk anything more about this matchup, except for the fact that, like you said, you put these four in the ring, you're probably going to get something decent. Well, nope, not in this case. It was very much a squash match. It was very, very quick. And yeah, there was nothing really else to sort of really gloss over. But yeah, 1.5 out of 10. How can I give it anything more than that, really, to be honest? It was like, two little moments, and then that was it. So yeah, just wild, I suppose, right? I mean, these Hart Foundation, they're going to be challenging Demolition for the tag titles soon after this. I guess that's one way to to show that you really are the team to worry about, right?
Yeah, I think clearly that was the goal of building up the Hart Foundation. I think there are better ways and more effective ways to do it, I would say. But yeah, this is what we got. So it's hard to give these kind of matches a rating, and I think probably a non-rating would probably be best in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I gave it a 2 out of 10, which is kind of standard for any sort of action taking place in the ring. You automatically get something like that from me. But yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, it was effective in making them feel established, and the crowd absolutely loved the fact that they didn't have to listen to the rest of that Soviet national anthem. So I guess props to them. It sent them home happy for this particular match. Us, not so much. Getting on to the next match, we have the Barbarian with once again Bobby the Brain Heenan going up against the ever consistent Tito Santana. KP, what'd you think of this one?
So yeah, ever consistent Santana, right? I think we see him in a match, and you normally think, oh, this is going to be a pretty decent contest as a minimum. I think this is probably his worst WrestleMania match that I can say safely. It was okay. Like I've already described two matches like this already, but this is the third rendition of it was okay, it was there, it was fine, and it was just decent. There's not really much to say. It was too short. Like I felt like if they gave these guys another like 5 minutes or so, maybe we'd be talking a lot differently. But because of just how things went down, they had a decent back and forth, and it wasn't anything like crazy bad or anything. But just because it was so short, they didn't have much time to play with. There's not really much you can do in that sense when you got two guys who are pretty good in the ring. Yeah, you can't tell much of a story in a match like that. So yeah, just a little bit of a shame about the time slot. It gets to a point where Bobby Heenan puts Barbarian's foot onto the ropes after Tito hits a jumping forearm. Pretty nice forearm, to be fair. Yeah, Barbarian basically just uses this as an opportunity to turn things around. Does so pretty quickly afterwards. He gets a diving clothesline from, I think, the second rope it was. And yeah, that allows him to pick up the victory. Pretty hellacious clothesline, to be fair. Lots of momentum carrying him down there, brutal sort of like hit. And yeah, that gets him the 1-2-3 and a victory over Tito Santana. But yeah, like I said, it's just, there wasn't really too much really to say about it. There was a nice matchup. It flowed really well. But just because it was just too short, like what can you really do about that? But yeah, probably only about a few minutes, this one, maybe like 4 or 5 minutes most. But yeah, I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. You give these guys another another few minutes on top, I reckon we're talking like, maybe like a 6, 6.57, whatever, depending on how things go. But yeah, just a shame about the time.
Really wish we had a counter on these videos for how many times we've said something exactly like that. Essentially, now that I'm thinking about it, it basically feels like like a weekly TV match, something you'd see on a weekly episode of Raw or SmackDown. Not gonna light the world on fire, on a weekly show, but here you are at Mania and giving us these kind of matches. Should be doing something better. Clearly, this was to establish the Barbarian, and I thought I did a decent job of it. But you want to establish him more. I think either you make the match shorter, taking out someone as consistent as Tito Santana, or you make it longer and make Tito Santana look like a legitimate threat, but not good enough to take out the Barbarian. So I think you just kind of have to pick a lane, and they kind of just set on the fence there, as I very much do with this match, giving it a rating out of 10. I give it a 5. Again, 5 more minutes, I think this is a decent match. But yeah, that clothesline at the end, that was hellacious. A statement there, I suppose you could say. But yeah, definitely won't be going down as match of the night from me. Getting into something very different, we see the WrestleMania debut of Dusty Rhodes with Saphire and Elizabeth going up against Randy the Macho Man, or Macho King in this instance, Savage, and Queen Sherri. Yeah, this was definitely something different. We got a mixed tag match here. KP, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this definitely was different, right? Had an interesting vibe to it. Had a unique flow. Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire, yeah, they make their entrance down, and Dusty takes to the mic immediately, and yeah, announces that he's got somebody else that's wanting to come out into his corner, and someone that Macho Man knows pretty well. And yeah, it was Miss Elizabeth making her return to WWE in a managerial capacity. She'd been out for a while, not being involved in the managerial side of things. Obviously lots went down, the prior year. So yeah, this was the return of her, and the crowd went electric for her. They were great. They were very, very happy to see her. And she said in an interview prior in the night as well that the next time that she was going to be back in the managerial sense, she might be a little bit more hands-on and a little bit more physical in that sense. And yeah, a little bit more about that in a minute. So Dusty Rhodes, Sapphire, very unique sort of team. This one, I think the same could probably be said for Macho Man and the Macho King, sorry, and Sensational Sherri. And yeah, I thought the match just had a had a very unique flow. It was quite fun. Like, I described this as a fun car crash. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but that's my ideal way of just saying exactly what went down here. Like, it was so much fun to watch, but my god, was it sort of like just crazy, chaotic, and just somewhat nightmarish in parts. I think that sort of like capitalizes the fact that it was a little bit of a car crash at times. But as the match sort of like goes on and stuff, and we see like all these crazy sort of like little bits here and there between really all four of the competitors in the ring. It gets to a point where Sapphire, she does end up actually getting the victory in the end. You got Miss Elizabeth on the outside. She actually grabs Sherri, so like literally grabs her by, I think it's by her hair, by her face, sort of thing. She shoves her back into the ring, and Sapphire is sort of like, she like knelt down, sort of like in a crawling position, just behind where Sherri stood. And as Sherri like is pushed back, she falls over Sapphire, and sort of like with her legs up in the air, Sapphire can just quickly go over onto the top of her, hold her shoulders down, and would get the victory in the end by that pinfall. But yeah, definitely a new side of things for Miss Elizabeth, getting a little bit more physical and a little bit more hands-on in a matchup. Obviously, a lot of history between herself and the Macho King now, Randy Savage. But yeah, the dynamic was so fascinating. Sapphire was involved for a little bit, here and there. Some hip attacks during the matchup as well. Went for a fireman's carry move, it's like slamming down Sherri at one point, which is quite cool. Macho, I think, had a couple of moments where he was like maybe getting a little bit, not in like a punch capacity, but like a little bit physical with like Sapphire, and so many times he basically ended up just getting knocked into his partner, Sensational Sherri. And yeah, it was quite a physical contest, to be fair, for the majority. No one really sort of like ducked away from being hit or being taken out and whatnot, and being clattered, thrown about, whatnot, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, a fun car crash. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It's one of those matches that you need to see it to believe it, and it was pretty entertaining, to be fair.
I think a fun car crash is a perfect way to describe this match. A technical classic, no, but a match that makes you smile. This is that. Dusty Rhodes obviously having to carry his team a bit. Sapphire far from a seasoned vet, and that shows. I think that's a good portion of the kind of car crash ish type description here. Some of the things that she does, you can tell she's trying her best, but it's not going great. But everyone else doing their part, kind of helping bridge that gap, and Dusty Rhodes on your team will certainly help. And then, yeah, I love seeing Miss Elizabeth get involved. All those matches she's been involved in, she very much just sits there. Is a pretty face, and for her to get involved in, especially the outcome, being the deciding factor in the outcome, I thought that was a great change of pace for her. But yeah, I think clearly they were very limited in what they could do. But yeah, this was entertaining, made you laugh, made you smile. And mixed match was definitely not a routine thing, and so I think that is on the table here and shown here. But yeah, I thought this was fun, something different, a very nice change of pace, and what felt like at this point kind of a dragging mania with for the most part. Uh, if I didn't give it a rating, I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. But with that, let's move on to the next match. We have the Orient Express with the returning Mr. Fuji without eye paint this time, going up against the Rockers. So, haven't seen the Orient Express, but we have seen the Rockers and know to expect a lot from them. KP, what'd you think of this one? Did they live up to that lofty tag expectations we've developed over the last 6 Manias?
Um, I think there have been better tag matches. I think there have been worse. So this is somewhere like in the middle, I would say, out of all of those. The Rockers' second of WrestleMania appearance, and yeah, not bad to be fair. I think when you're up against a team like the Orient Express, you've always got that sort of unpredictability in there, and I think that sort of like was the case for this matchup as well. You miss a Fuji being a pain, on the outside and stuff, getting involved here and there as well. So yeah, I think it was. I think it was a way to sort of like establish the Orient Express here as a credible tag team as well, and I think it did a decent job of that. To be fair, heelish antics throughout the contest as well from the Orient Express, and some nice tag team offense from both teams. Really, I think throughout the contest, it was a nice flow. It gelled pretty well together. About how the match went down in the end, you got the Rockers. They're looking to finish things up. Both of them get onto the top rope in different corners. You got Mr. Fuji on the outside, like I said, being a bit of a menace. He goes on to tap Marty's leg with his cane. That results in Marty basically getting off the corner and running around sort of like part of the ring to chase Fuji. And you got Sako, who turns Marty around after giving him a little bit of a chase unknowingly to him anyway. Turns him around and just quickly throws salt into his eyes, which obviously is a very Mr. Fuji move, which completely blinds him, to the point where he can't see at all. And he ends up quite comically doing so. He falls over the barricade at ringside and actually into the front row of the crowd. So it was quite a funny sort of like a fall there. But like he went full on. Like there was no sort of like a half attempt at doing it. It was like a full-on proper, right, I'm just gonna fall and I'm gonna just flip over into the audience here. And yeah, I think the guys in the front row had a pretty nice surprise there with Marty Jannetty just going straight over them. Yeah, the referee, he's obviously distracted by all of this, so he didn't really see any of it. And yeah, it gets to a point where Marty Jannetty gets counted out. So a little bit of a lackluster finish. They didn't, I guess, want Shawn Michaels to take the pinfall, I guess, in this case. So, or or maybe Marty Jannetty, because he's the legal guy and got counted out. But yeah, I think just it could have been a better finish, to be fair. I thought it maybe was a little bit anticlimactic, but yeah, I mean, I guess it was quite comical the way it happened, but definitely, showcasing what the Orient Express can do and, the measures that they're willing to go to win these matches. But yeah, a win for the Orient Express. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Like I said, it was okay. It was a decent tag match, but it wasn't anything crazy. And I think it was better than some of them that we have seen. It's just somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Anticlimactic finish, obviously being the biggest kind of ding to the match itself, because the number of times the Rockers did something in sync here is truly impressive. Clearly one of the better tag teams in the business at the time, and the Orient Express, they were no slouches themselves. They looked pretty good here as well, for the amount of time we did get to see them. But of course, as we've seen, hundreds of times over the first 6 years, it feels like, the manager, in this case, Mr. Fuji, playing dividends, getting that salt into Jannetty's eyes. And that was a nasty looking spill. Definitely gets a few points for the believability. But yeah, the match was going along quite nicely. until it wasn't. So yeah, another match for the Buck. I think this one is a little bit better than those average kind of matches we've seen so far. This one was cooking, just got cut a bit short. So I did give this one a 6 out of 10. Maybe a bit high, but just desperate to see something a little different at this point in the night. But yeah, in terms of matches we've seen over the night, I think this one was one of the better ones, albeit that finish. Getting into the next match, we see a Hacksaw Jim Duggan going up against Dino Bravo, and he is accompanied by Earthquake, so making his way back to the ring as well, and very much his presence being felt here. KP, what'd you make of this one?
Oh, that's basically the vibe for these ones, isn't it? I don't know. I couldn't help but smile throughout this matchup. I don't know why. Maybe it's just Hacksaw starting to really just get to me, and just I'm starting to enjoy the matches that he's in. But yeah, Hacksaw gets the victory against Dino Bravo in this next match. Dino Bravo's got a little bit of Jimmy Hart and Earthquake on the outside supporting him in this one. But yeah, couldn't quite get the job done in the end. You got Earthquake, who does interfere, distracting the referee at one point. Jimmy Hart, he's on the outside, obviously, as I said. Throws Hacksaw's 2x4 into the ring. Basically, the aim is for Dino Bravo to actually use it himself. But Hacksaw manages to get the 2x4 off of Dino, and actually, it strikes him with it. Just essentially just shoves it alongside the other side of the ring, not even out of it. And the referee goes down, doesn't notice the 2x4 in the ring, counts the 1, 2, 3, and gives Hacksaw Jim Duggan the win from that pinfall. But yeah, in terms of the match itself, it wasn't a technical brilliant contest, but I don't know. I just couldn't help but smile at it. It wasn't anything like fantastic, but I just had a little bit of fun watching it. It was a little entertaining. Post match had a little bit of shenanigans as well. Earthquake getting into the ring and absolutely destroying Hacksaw. May I say? He hits 2 elbows and then 3 Earthquake splashes, just completely laying waste to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. It was quite brutal. The assault in the end, but doesn't take away the fact that Hacksaw got the victory. Although Dino Bravo, Earthquake, and Jimmy Hart may be sounding tall at the very end of the matchup. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Like I said, it wasn't a technical display, but I don't know. I just couldn't help but smile and enjoy it. It was a little entertaining, and I quite liked that, but it wasn't a great match. So somewhere in the middle, I think, is pretty fair.
Yeah, I completely agree. Decent enough back and forth. And once again, Jimmy Hart's presence seems to be costing more people matches than helping them these days. There at the beginning, he was very much a force, but now it seems like he's costing just as much as he's helping. So interesting bit there. The 2x4, of course, had to come into play. And although Hacksaw does get the win, he probably doesn't feel like he won much of anything after getting completely demolished by Earthquake. Curious to see if we see him going forward. I knew of him when I saw his face. I knew I had seen him, but couldn't think of his name. Obviously, with the way he wrestles and his gimmick, if you will, are quickly apparent of why he's being called that. But curious to see if he does something going forward in our WrestleMania reviews, because he clearly is being built for something big throughout this night. I give this one a 5 out of 10. Again, not a bad match. Just nothing crazy either. So, like you said, far from a technical masterpiece. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the next match, which I rated as the match of the night. This match has $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase with Virgil going up against Jake the Snake Roberts for that $1 Million championship. KP, what'd you make of this one?
Yeah, I thought this match was good. It was pretty solid, to be fair. I think for the most part, I think these two guys really were able to sort of like capitalize on the situation, show what they can really do. Wouldn't say it was my match of the night, but it was a good matchup for sure as well. Jake the Snake Roberts, I think he hasn't had the best run of WrestleMania matches, but this for me is probably my favorite of his, I would say, up until this point. Gets a point in the matchup where Virgil pulls Jake to ringside before Ted ends up following up afterwards. He locks in the $1 Million Dream. Jake's sort of like struggling, trying to sort of like get free from him. Ends up colliding both men into the ring post. So like a little bit of a nasty thing there. Virgil helps DiBiase get back up to his feet and, basically gets him into the ring. And then that leaves Jake on the outside to be counted out. So unfortunately, it was a win for the $1 million man via countout. Again, I think maybe they could have done something a little different here. Not that I'm against these, like, different finishes, but I just think that, I don't know. Maybe it depends on, like, how it was back then, like, the profile of Jake the Snake, maybe, but I think, there's no harm in having somebody just lose, just genuinely just losing the matchup rather than being counted out. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe just that sort of like put a little bit of a sour note on things. I saw how things were going to go. I was like, oh, it's going to be a count out now, isn't it? And then obviously it happened to be, and I was like, oh, all right then, okay. So yeah, I don't know, just a little bit of a sour taste. But in terms of the match, it was really good. It was very back and forth, a very physical fight. And even went on to post match as well, like a lot of these segments do. To be fair, on these early WrestleManias, Jake taking the fight to Virgil and DiBiase. That ends up with Virgil running off. Jake hits his DDT on the Ted DiBiase before then going to bring in Damien. Then we see Virgil come back on out, and he manages to get DiBiase out of the ring and into safety. And then there's a little bit of a I think the closing moment. Jake with Damien around his neck, just running up behind Ted DiBiase as they chase backstage. So yeah, it was a good match. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. But yeah, just a shame about the finish because obviously, I saw it coming and I really didn't want it to happen, and then it did, and I was like, oh god, okay. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. Solid contest, but yeah, it was it was decent. I quite liked it.
So thinking about this and how often we say that the ending, kind of hurt the match. This one felt like it didn't as much as the others because they did get so much time before that, and what was going along really nicely. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure what's worse, having a count out at the big, towards the beginning of the match, or just when you're getting started, or after the match when you've had a really good one up until then, getting in. So I'm not sure which is worse. I'm sure we could have a big old long discussion on it, but for what it is, that's what we got here. Yeah, these two just put in some time, put in some work, and it was very good back and forth. And at this point in the night, we hadn't had much of that. So for me, it was a breath of fresh air, absolutely. I will say that Jake the Snake Roberts and Damien bit, I would say they don't use it enough. I think if you have a live snake at at the ringside, I think you should be using that more. And maybe they do on a general basis, but on the Mania stage, we really haven't seen that outside of post match for the most part. So if it was me and I was booking it back then, I would say, get that snake involved. It's part of your name. Make it happen. But don't have to take the snake out of the bag per se, but at least kind of grab it, pretend like you're going to, make sure that fear is still in there, because for the most part, I feel like it's usually like once or twice they remember that it's there, and that's kind of it. But yeah, for me, this was match of the night, and definitely match of the night up until this point. But yeah, I give this one an 8 out of 10. Yeah, just a breath of fresh air for me. Getting back into the not so great matches, we have Big Boss Man going up against Akeem, and he is accompanied by Slick. Yeah, before the match, Ted DiBiase is still hanging out at ringside and puts a nice little beating on Big Boss Man before throwing him back into the ring for Akeem. KP, what'd you make of this match?
Yeah, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I think I'll gladly put that out, to begin with here. With Big Boss Man getting beaten down by DiBiase to begin with here before the bell rang, I was thinking, all right, well, Boss Man's got a mountain to climb now. Someone the size of Akeem, there's obviously a heavyweight clash. And yeah, I think, you start off with a disadvantage. That's going to be extremely perilous for you. And the early stages were exactly that. It was a case of Akeem just, dominating very slowly, but, dominating the early doors of the contest. And then Big Boss Man eventually just starts to fight back, and he gets a series of clotheslines in, and then hits a Boss Man slam, and that's it. It's job done. So I don't know. It was a very weird matchup. Like the scales just got tilted, back in the favor of Boss Man. So imagine what would have happened maybe if DiBiase hadn't have got involved. Would it really have just been even quicker? I don't know, but yeah, it doesn't make Akeem look very good, this matchup. I think he lost a lot of stock from this one. can't beat a beaten down Big Boss Man who, got assaulted by, the $1 million champion Ted DiBiase. I mean, yeah, he just had a match, but, he laid out Boss Man. So, nothing too bad about what DiBiase did. But yeah, it was a very interesting way they did the contest here. I didn't see it coming whatsoever. So I guess that's a surprise. But was that a good thing? I'm not entirely certain. But yeah, after the matchup, Slickster gets into the ring. He goes to attack Big Boss Man, but he just gets punched in the face after being held for a little while. So yeah, literally nothing affected the big boss man after a certain point in this matchup, and then throughout the end of the segment as well. So yeah, very interesting stuff from this one. I give it 3.5 out of 10. It was a whirlwind of emotions, and yeah, very confusing at the same time. It wasn't exactly anything great. Just it was what it was. 3.5.
See, it's interesting that we both watched the same match, and I kind of took the other side of it. I think instead of Akeem, not being, worthy and not able to take down and already beaten down Big Boss Man, I took it the other way in that I thought, well, hey, they're probably trying to, build up Big Boss Man because he was able to not only go through that, pre-match beatdown, but also take out someone like Akeem that quickly. So clearly headed for bigger and better things. That's kind of how I took it. But yeah, not a great match, but maybe a more of a statement win. And I felt like in that instance, in that essence, it was effective in what it was. But again, as you mentioned, a very quick match. So gave this one a 4 out of 10. It just felt like it was at least effective in building someone up. So I at least gave it that, maybe a bit high, but still. It's something at least had a point to the match, I think was my overall takeaway. Getting on to the next match, we have the Ravishing Rick Rude with Bobby the Brain Heenan once again going up against Superfly Jimmy Snuka. KP, what'd you make of this one?
Well, first and foremost, the condition, the physique of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, unbelievable. For a man of his age at this point, he looks absolutely unreal, to be fair. And, you're in the ring with someone like Rick Rude, who is, incredibly built. And yeah, he didn't look out of shape at all compared to him, did he? It was a pretty crazy sort of like a matchup here between the two of them. In terms of how the match went down, though, I'm not entirely convinced it was a good match. It was okay. It was fine. It was very quick. I think that's fair to say. It was a very short matchup. Didn't go the distance. But in terms of what it did, I think it showcased Superfly at least decently well from the time that he was in the ring with Rick Rude, and it allowed Rick to sort of like show that he is just a step ahead of Superfly at the moment. Jimmy started off pretty well, to be fair. He hit some diving attacks throughout the contest, a little bit back and forth here and there with Rude. It gets to a point where Jimmy goes to the second rope, attempts to hit another diving headbutt, which he'd hit earlier on in the matchup. But this time, Rick does get out of the way. He hits his Rude Awakening, and that gets him the victory in this matchup. So, yeah, pretty quick. Maybe I'd describe this one as sort of like a Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, modern day type match between two guys, who are just sort of like fighting for a place on the cards type situation. Yeah, it wasn't anything special, but it didn't do anything crazily bad, I suppose. I gave it a 4 out of 10. The time of the matchup just didn't really allow it to sort of really get going. And obviously, yeah, there's not really much I can really say about the matchup that I haven't already said. So yeah, it just, it's one of those things, and it was able to get two men on the card. I suppose that was probably the main goal of this one. But Rick Rude looked pretty great on it, as did Snuka. But I think the main take is that Rude is a step ahead of the game at this point.
Yeah, I found it interesting because we've seen Superfly basically since WrestleMania 1. He was kind of one of Hulk's friends at the time, and just randomly got involved in the match. Wasn't there at ringside at the beginning of the match, but somehow ended up getting involved. But now here we are, WrestleMania 6, and it's his first in-ring match. So I don't, safe to say that this man has had a controversial life, but I'm not sure where he's at. Where has he been, throughout these WrestleManias? Because as you mentioned, he looked great here. So not exactly sure where he's been and what he's been doing. But for him to finally get involved, I thought, hey, maybe this is, his kickoff, his start. I didn't realize he was that old. You mentioned that, and I had to go quickly look it up. I guess he was 47 at the time. He certainly doesn't look it. I hope I look half as good at that age. But yeah, I didn't realize that, but yeah, it's just not much of a match, and didn't have nearly enough time. And I thought with the two involved, it was going to get a good amount of time. Um, Ravishing Rick Rude obviously able to uh, hold it down for a bit, and it looked like Superfly could have as well, but whatever reason it didn't. So yeah, that's what we got. So 4.5 out of 10 from me. Now, let's get into the main event, which the tagline of WrestleMania very much kind of tells you what's going on. The Ultimate Challenge. This is the very first on Mania title versus title match. Obviously, the Ultimate Warrior holding the IC title, Hulk Hogan holding that WWE Championship. This was also the first time that WrestleMania ever features the main event, a face versus face matchup. So, KP, let us know what you thought of this one. And in terms of main events, where does this one rank for you?
So I'm pretty high on this one, to be fair. I thought this was a really good watch. Hulk Hogan isn't my favorite person to watch in the ring, to be honest with you, and I wouldn't have said really, the Ultimate Warrior is either. But you put these two together, and they made a really compelling contest. I think it was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. It was gripping. Yeah, it just did everything it really needed to do. It showcased both men what they can do. The things, the quirks they have, everything that goes about their characters, and they just gelled together so incredibly well. They just bounced off of one another, really. And yeah, the charisma was all over the place in this one. It was a really big main event feel, which was nice. I think this is probably my favorite Hulk Hogan matchup to date. So probably my favorite Hulk Hogan match, to be fair. But yeah, we'll see. What comes next anyway. But regarding this one, it was really, really fun. The referee does end up having a bump in the matchup that allows both men to get covers that could have won them the match in their own respects. I think it gets to a point where Jesse Ventura on commentary says, "Well, this is now 2 out of 3 falls because it's 1 fall each." So yeah, quite an interesting take there, but it makes sense, to be fair. It was really back and forth throughout the whole match. Like, there was no point where one man dominated for a very large part of it. It was like a case of maybe a couple of minutes, someone dominates, then the tide turns, and then that person dominates, and that it just seemed to go like that for a large part of it. There was a point where there was a bear hug, maybe that was like the longest part, and that was in Ultimate Warrior's favor, mixed with a couple of other things before and after. But yeah, I think just the way the scales just shifted so many times. It was really, really good to watch. Hogan kicks out of a splash to the back. This is towards the end of the matchup now, and he starts hulking up, classic Hulk Hogan fashion. He's going to go through the motions, as he does, and he goes for his leg drop, but Warrior rolls out of the way, doesn't get the hit from it, and then Warrior immediately bounces off the ropes, hits a splash, and wins the championship. So, becoming a double champion, Ultimate Warrior, Intercontinental and WWF Heavyweight Champion. Hogan does present Warrior with a championship post-match as well, so a little bit of sportsmanship between the two of them. Holds his hand up high, saying, this is the better man. Fair play, he won, he beat me. And he then leaves the ring in order to let Ultimate Warrior celebrate as we get fireworks going off at WrestleMania. I don't know if that's the first time. It felt like it was for me. Don't remember seeing any from 1 to 5. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me, please, if you can. But yeah, I think that was the first time we saw fireworks at WrestleMania. So they were going off, in the ring and around the arena, sort of thing, in little bits here and there. But yeah, it felt like a really big moment, and like a passing of the torch style situation here, really, from Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the match. It was probably the best main event we've seen so far in the 6 WrestleManias that we've watched. And I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was just solid and a really, really compelling contest. What did you make of it, Nick? How did it weigh up in terms of, in comparison with the rest of the WrestleManias that we've seen main events? And what did you make of the match specifically?
Yeah, and so when we, comparatively speaking, when we are comparing main events, we forget, or maybe we don't, that Hulk Hogan is involved in every single one. And so when you said that you thought this was Hulk Hogan's best, main event match, I kind of thought back to the rest of them. I said, yeah, you're right. This is the best match, because every main event he's in, or every match he's in, is for the most part the main event. With that. I thought this was a technical classic, not even close. But from a storytelling standpoint, and these two feeding off of each other, bouncing off each other quite nicely, telling that story face to face was probably something they were very worried that wasn't going to work, but they did it anyways. Title versus title, for sure, that's a big deal. So the stakes were very high with this one, and the crowd was eating up every second of it, and I think that made it much more entertaining for us. I would, in terms of the crowd, I think this probably rivaled, the WrestleMania 3, I believe it was, the one in Michigan, at the Pontiac Dome. I think this one rivaled those. These two definitely are by far the best two crowds we've seen. I think I would probably argue this one, but of course, this one has 30,000 less than that one did. So, for whatever that's worth, I felt like this one ton of fun because of the crowd. And I never thought I'd see the day Hulk losing in the main event. I'm not sure that I was ever going to see that. And for him to lose his title and essentially now Warrior being a double champ, two belts around him, that's a pretty incredible feat, especially when you get that win over Hulk. Of course, Hulk did immediately kick out after that third count. We always notice those kind of things. But apparently Hulk was happy to do it. Although uh, he was very vocal in the fact that he said Ultimate Warrior would fail and this experiment wouldn't work, and that Vince would be calling him back, begging him to come back. To become the face of the WWE once again. So I'm sure we'll get into that more in the coming years to how that worked out. But yeah, definitely, like I said, far from a classic, but a ton of fun in terms of storytelling here. Um, yeah, Ultimate Warrior being the very first person in WWE to hold both the World Heavyweight Championship, WWE Championship, and the IC title. So yeah, this was a ton of fun. I too gave this one an 8 out of 10, which is the same rating I gave the Jake the Snake Ted DiBiase match. I just enjoyed that one better from an overall in ring perspective. So that's why I gave that one the match of the night. But this one, obviously, a very, very close second. So with that, this is WrestleMania 6 review all wrapped up. KP, let's give us your overall rating and any final thoughts on this one, and we'll go ahead and get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, so I think out of all the WrestleManias that we've done so far, I think this one probably felt like the better of the WrestleManias. I don't know. It's very difficult because you got a couple of matches that were pretty great, and then you've got a lot of some matches that were just sort of like a very big disappointment and just didn't live up to any hype or whatever, and just felt really flat. And maybe you got a couple of throwaway contests in there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's very difficult to sort of like give a really high overall rating because my ratings do come as like an overall from all of them put together. So it works out as a 5.5 out of 10. So far it is my joint highest score in terms of these WrestleMania podcasts that we've been doing. But yeah, I think I had probably the most fun watching this one. So whatever that's worth, same rating as another one that we've already done. But I just had a bit more fun watching it. So I guess this one does sort of have like a bit of a lead. It certainly had the best main event that we've seen, that's for sure, for me personally. And yeah, it had some nice moments throughout the night as well. But yeah, definitely some sort of like ups and downs. That's fair to say. Like all these have been. But yeah, it seems to be the vibe for sure in these early WrestleManias. But yeah, how did you make this one, Nick? Did you find it to be like the best one so far, or sort of like somewhere along the lines very similar quality to what we already have seen in these past WrestleManias?
In terms of the overall rating, it gets a 5 out of 10. Like you said, averaged out throughout the night. Um, but it feels like, and I feel like I'm saying this over the last few. You take out the main event, you take out the Ted DiBiase, Jake the Snake Roberts match. You have a ton of matches that just didn't feel like they were WrestleMania worthy, and cut too short, whatever have you. Very few matches outside of those two felt like they were Mania worthy, and so with that, you know, I I just take it away being another kind of bang average show. Is it better than a couple of them? Yeah, I think for me, probably sets towards the top of the six we've done so far. But outside of those two matches, I don't think I'll be coming back to watch anything from this one, which very much feels like what I've said for the last few. So, yeah, not a bad WrestleMania. Definitely that main event and the match I mentioned before definitely saved it. But I think the main event being successful, I think, is definitely, which I argue the last year's one wasn't. I think that's a big play in how you walk away. So with that, I think this one's better than 5 for me. But yeah, definitely far from a great show throughout. So with that, this has been our WrestleMania 6 review, and this has been the latest project of our WrestleMania review, going through 1 through 41. Of course, we have a ways to go, so we'll be back shortly to do WrestleMania 7. In the meantime, if you like what we're putting out here, agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you'd like to. Otherwise, we'll be back shortly, of course, with our weekly recaps. But in the meantime, we will be doing Raw, NXT, the usual. This week we have WrestlePalooza as well. So until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. Take care.